Hello, Radiant One, and welcome to The Spiritual Business with Maria Saraphina, the show and podcast for soul-driven, heart-based spiritual entrepreneurs and Magdalens rising, ready to grow and expand from within, and wanting to lead with love in business and life. I am your host, spiritual business coach, mentor, catalyst, and facilitator, Maria Saraphina, and it is my deep honor, my great pleasure, and joy to share this episode with you. If you feel the deep stirrings of something new asking to be born through you, go to mariasarafina.com/DCIA to download the free guide, Divine Clarity and Inspired Action that I have created for you. Divine Clarity and Inspired Action will help you connect deeply with your divine feminine essence of gnosis, wisdom, knowledge, and intuition, as well as activate your divine masculine essence of action, creation, expansion, foundation, and building, so that you may experience the satisfaction and the liberation that comes from living your truth, from bringing to life that which you're here to birth, while being, doing, and living your soul's divine purpose. On my website, you will also find show notes, transcripts, and previous episodes. Also, if you're a Magdalene rising or have been called by the Magdalene, you may want to check out my other show and podcast, The Magdalene Voices, where I share sacred conversations with beautiful, illuminating souls, as well as insightful inspiration to nourish every cell of your body, every fiber of your being, every aspect of your soul and existence through lifetimes past, present, and future. You can go to my website, mariasarafina.com, for links to everywhere it's being broadcasted. Finally, as always, I encourage you to listen with an open heart and an open mind, and take only what serves you and leave the rest. I am not your guru, nor am I your teacher. Instead, let me serve you as your guide, your catalyst, and facilitator, so that which you're here to birth might find its expression in the world the only way that it can. Through you. Here is today's episode. Hello, Radiant One, and a very big and a very warm welcome into today's episode of the Spiritual Business Podcast. Today's episode is inspired by two things. Number one, it's inspired by a surprise insight that I had not too long ago. And it's also inspired by the work that I do with my clients. And this goes whether you are just starting out, whether you are seasoned, or if you're like a real vet and has been in the game for a very long time. I see this as something that can come up in different forms, and it may reappear, or it may go away completely and then come back a few years later, or it may just be gone completely by the first time we work with it. And it has to do with numbers and how it is not about the numbers, quote unquote. I feel like I should start maybe out with a small disclaimer. And when I'm talking about the numbers throughout this episode, I am not talking about your finances or your money. It is very obvious that if you are in business and you do not look at your numbers, and if you do not have an income, then you won't stay in business for very long. So when I am talking about numbers throughout this episode, those are not the numbers that I am talking about. Instead, I'm talking about all of the likes, the comments, the shares, the clicks, the subscribers, all of the numbers that are literally outside of yourself, outside of your control. Those are the numbers that I'm talking about. And as I started out saying, this is partly inspired by a surprise insight that I had not too long ago. You may or may not know that I have not one, but two podcasts. I have this one, the Spiritual Business Show and Podcast with Maria Saraphina, and then I also have the Magdalene Voices. Now, the Magdalene Voices was the first podcast that I started, and I started it back in, I want to say August of 2017. Yes, August of 2017. And if you followed me throughout that journey, you may also be aware that at first, for me, starting a podcast was like, that was not what I thought I was supposed to do. it was a dear friend, Trisha McCannon, who is in the very first episode, who suggested it. And at first I was very like, podcast, and no, I want it to be about me, because she suggested that I interview people and that I join in sacred conversation with people, or sacred conversation is my concept of it because that's how I see it. But she suggested that I do like a TV show or something where I had brilliant, magnificent people on. And at first I was like, no, I want it to be about me. And there's a whole episode about that where I share that. And then I had the epiphany a few days later where it was like, literally, like, you know, the one of those moments where everything just clicks into place and you're like, OMG, I'm supposed to do this. And you just know with every inch of your being and your soul, everything is just like, that is what I'm supposed to do. And that is the reason why I started the Magdalene Voices, and also why I started the Spiritual Business Podcast, because I felt that I had something within my heart and within my soul that was calling me, pulling me to do this. And it was calling me without me actually knowing what was going on. It was calling me from a place that I, at that time, had only delved into a tiny little bit, and since then have massively expanded and explored, because that's what's happened when you lead with love. Love expands in your, whether that's in your life or in your business, and it just grows and grows and grows. Not saying that it's all rainbows and butterflies and unicorns, because there is challenges and struggles and issues and, you know, lessons to be learned and all of those things as well. So, and hopefully by now, if you know just a little bit about me, you know that I am both for the light and for the dark, because I see the beauty and the power and the magnificent transformation that lies within both of those realms. However, one of the things that I guess this is especially come up because we are really in the time of social media and online marketing and the online world. And so I know that when I first started out, what is now millennia ago, or feels like years and years and years ago, I would sit and I would be watching the numbers. Like at that time, social media wasn't that big of a deal. Oh my God, I'm old. That is just like an epiphany I just had. Because at that time, you know, and this is the truth, social media, I'm not even sure that Instagram was around when I first started. Yeah, sorry for that little side joke. It's not even a joke because it's my life. But yeah, at that time, social media, but it was more like online. It was searching. It was getting people to know your, getting people on your newsletter. And I would be like sitting there. And I remember at that time, I was using MailChimp at the time, which I don't anymore, but I was at the time. And I remember they had this function where you could receive an email like every time someone had subscribed, which I very quickly unsubscribed from, because it can be like something that can really lift you up or tear you down, depending on whether or not you look, or whether you choose to look at it. And that is really what I want to speak to in this episode, is what you are choosing to allow to affect your joy and your satisfaction and your happiness. Because I've sat in session with clients where they have had a certain number of followers or a certain number of subscribers or a certain number of likes and comments, and they're either disappointed with it or they're uplifted by it. And you can be either or. And I understand that it can be really, really difficult to let go of that kind of notion that, oh, there's a lot of people who like that. Yes. And quote unquote, abandon that for your truth, for your heart, for what is calling you. And this is where, like when you're kind of deep in, like if you're a seasoned entrepreneur, or you are like an experienced vet when it comes to your business, I know that the challenges can be different. For some, if you're first starting out, getting those subscribers and getting those followers to recognize you, see you, know that you're here to serve them, it can be thrilling, as well as can be daunting, because like, who are they, what are you, and how are you going to be working together is a beautiful exploration, but also can be very like, ooh. At the same time, if you're someone who's seasoned or even a veteran, when you have those numbers, when you have those quote unquote high numbers, then abandoning that because your heart is calling you to do something different, or to do it differently, or to do it on another platform or another, that can be equally as challenging, and as it can bring up another layer of lessons to be learned, of insights to be had, and revelations to be welcomed in. And so that's my ultimate thing with this is really that I want you to have a look at how you're allowing your numbers to affect you on your daily, weekly, monthly life and business, and whether or not it is lifting you up or whether or not you're allowing it to tear you down, because it can do either or. And it can also become non-important to a point where you understand that you carry within you the peace and the love and the joy and the satisfaction. And there is no one and nothing outside of yourself that is the master of that, unless you choose to give that power away. And that goes, and it's important for me to underscore that goes whether or not you allow yourself to be uplifted by the numbers, or whether or not you allow yourself to be torn down by the numbers. Because whether you allow to yourself, like, it's really two polarities. And I'm not saying that you should not have joy and satisfaction or happiness at all when you're uplifted by the numbers. However, I want you to become conscious and aware of whether or not that then turns into an addiction. If it turns into a point where you are so dependent on it that if you do not see the numbers that you think that you have, that you are then becoming depressed by it, or thinking that you're doing something wrong or something should be shifting. I hope I've underscored that enough. At the same time, I'm also not saying that if you do not, quote unquote, see the numbers that you would like to see, or comments that you would like to have, or the shares that you would like to have, that you do not use that as a tool for learning, for shifting, for seeing if you could be doing something differently. However, there is a big difference between saying that, how can I see this as doing something differently, or turning it into, oh, there must be something wrong with me. Must be something wrong with what I'm sharing. I'm hoping that makes sense. As I've mentioned a few times, this episode was inspired by my own personal discovery in terms of numbers. When I first started the Magdalene Voices, I never ever did it for any kind of numbers or followers or subscribers or likes or shares or any of that. For some reason, that I had already abandoned that in the beginning of my journey. Like I said, I had unsubscribed from the email you get, like you now have this many subscribers. I had already abandoned that principle. And so I've not really looked at my numbers, like the listens and the views or the shares. That's not something that I had been looking at. And I can't remember why it was, but in the beginning of the year recently, I noticed the numbers. I think it was because someone had asked me about my numbers, and I went in, and I know that, when you go into, I'm hosting my podcast on a platform called Libsyn, and I know that when you go into the dashboard, you can see the numbers. They're there. I just never really looked at that. Like for me, that was never why I was doing it. And so when someone had asked me about my numbers, and I had to kind of gather the numbers from different platforms, from YouTube, from Libsyn, those different platforms that the podcasts are hosted on, and I realized that at that time it was more than 32, 35, I can't remember, 32-ish, not 31, something above 30,000 maybe, or near 30,000 views or listens combined over that period of time. I was struck by it because to me that is a high number, and I understand that for others that won't be a high number. For others that will be what they have maybe on a daily basis or a monthly basis or whatever, but for me that was a high number. There is a quote in A Course in Miracles that I truly love and adore, and I will share it with you, and it says, a miracle is never lost. It may touch many people you have not even met and produce undreamed of changes in situations of which you're not even aware. And that is a quote that I share with my clients, and it's a quote that I keep in mind as well myself, to remind me that I know that there are thousands. I don't have 30,000 comments or likes or shares of anything. However, I know that there is a 30,000 people, and now it's even more, but there's plus 30,000 people who have viewed, watched, or listened to something that I have put out into the world, something that has come from my heart to yours. And from the people that I do hear back from, I understand that very often it creates a change in them, or it gives them an insight or a revelation that they didn't have before. And so I know that from just knowing that how many actually do get back to you and reach out to you or comment or like or share, that number is multiplied. And so seeing that, I was just struck by it. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because I want you to return to the love. Is that whether or not you are in a place of beginning, whether or not you are seasoned, or whether or not you are a veteran, I hope that you can take some wisdom from this, in terms of always come from your heart, always come from your from love, because that has what been driving. If I had been driven by the numbers when I first put out the Magdalene Voices, I would very quickly have given up or stopped, because I wasn't seeing any numbers. I'm sure that in the beginning, and I can probably go back and see it, but I never looked for the numbers. What I looked for was the love that I want to share with these episodes, the sacred conversations that I'm having with these people that I want to put forth into the world, is like drops of water being spread, like drops being spread into water, and it creates a ripple effect. Now today I hear from people who have like seen or watched or heard an episode that I produced and we produced years ago, and I understand truly that those episodes, whether it be on the Magdalene Voices or here on the Spiritual Business Podcast, is that they are sacred transmissions and they live forever. And when you are ready to hear it, you will find it. And so, again, that doesn't stop me from promoting them or marketing them or sharing them or sending out my newsletters, letting you know about them. I still do all of those things. However, ultimately, I know that when the time is right, when divine timing is right, you will hear it, you will see it, you will find it. I've had people, and maybe that's on my part, but I've had people who's known me for years who then realizes, you do this? Because somehow, even though I've put it out there, even though I feel like I've, shouted it from the top of mountains, people have not seen it. People have not heard it because they've not been ready for it. And so I think that there comes a time when you're ready for it, and that's when you see it, hear it, or find it. And that's also why you are here now, because I believe that if you're listening to this right now, there is a part of you that is ready to hear that message of, where am I where am I surrendering my power to an outside force or source that is relying on something that is outside of my control? And how can I reclaim that power within me? How can I reclaim my joy, my satisfaction, my happiness, my love, for who I am and for what I am here to bring to the world, what I'm here to serve with, how I'm here to show up, and not have that be reliant on an outside source. And that goes literally with everything. It's not just the numbers. It's also in terms of speaking your truth, of sharing your truth, of what you believe in, what you know that you can support people with, what you know, what the changes you can help them create, the transformations you can hold space for. All of those things lies within you, and you have that within you, and you can share that with the world. And that goes again, because what I see now is how it's easy to think, if you're in the beginning of your journey, it's easy to think that those who, and that's one of the reasons why I am sharing the sacred conversations with successful spiritual entrepreneurs that I do. And I invite you to look back and see those that I've already done, and more are coming. That's the reason why I share that, is because I want you to see that while the challenges may not lie within, the financial part of it, but there are still challenges and struggles, and there may also be quote unquote financial issues, because what I've seen is that the more you expand from within, the more love you share in the world. And when I say love, I mean your services, your products, your offerings, your truth, your voice, your webinars, your graphics, your whatever it is that you are, however you are being called to share in this world. Whenever you share that, the challenges just shifts and change, and you never, being the, infinite soul that you are, like having a human experience, your desire to expand never ever cease to exist. I see this in my clients. I see this in myself, and how you are always wanting to expand, because that is what love does. It continues to expand and multiply in the world, because you are never, ever, ever going to stop feeling that desire and that call to share. So my invitation to you with this episode is to follow lead with love and follow your heart, abandoning the idea of having to know why you know what you know. Just lean into and surrender into what you know. And my invitation with this episode is to for you to, like I said, to stop surrendering your power or giving your power away, reclaim that power into yourself, and find a way to be truly satisfied with who you are, where you're at, and then expand from there. If you would like my support, you can go ahead and go to mariasarafina.com/apply to apply for a free discovery session. And also, finally, what I would love for you to share with me is that what has been the biggest takeaway that you have gotten from this episode. Please do share it with me in the comments below this episode. You can find, if you're listening on a podcast, you can find the link to in the show notes and to the show notes. And there's also the transcript. And if you see this on social media somewhere, I would love to hear from you as well. That is what I had for you today. I love you. Take care. That is what I had for you in today's episode of Spiritual Business with Maria Saraphina. I hope it served you well. For all the deeds and details, click the link in the description. And if you enjoyed this episode, support its message by sharing it with a friend or on social media. You can also choose to leave me a comment or a review. I love you. God bless.